I spent $500,000 on my stepdaughter over years, paying for her trips, college, and everything else, while her bio dad did nothing. Then she demanded I adopt her so she can get inheritance benefits after telling me I'm not her real dad. I, 42M, have been married to my wife, 40F, for 10 years. When we met, she was a single mom to a bright and energetic 9-year-old girl who is now 20. Her biological father was barely in the picture, mostly out, to be honest, since she was born. He didn't pay child support, rarely called, and only showed up on special occasions when it suited him. When he did, he'd show up with a last-minute dollar store gift, hang around for maybe an hour, and then leave. When I married my wife, I knew her daughter came as part of the package, and I was okay with that. In fact, I was excited about it. I grew up in a stable home, and I wanted to provide the same kind of stability for her. From the beginning, I threw myself into being a parent. I was at every parent-teacher conference, cheered her on from the sidelines at her soccer games, and helped her with school projects. I was the one she came to when she needed advice about boys or help with her calculus homework. Financially, I handled it all. Clothes, braces, extracurriculars, birthday trips, summer camps, and even a few things her mom didn't think were necessary, like private tutoring when her grade slipped in 10th grade. But no matter how much I did, I always felt like I was on the sidelines of her life. Her mom insisted on keeping her biological father in the picture, even if it was just a sporadic phone call or a half-hearted birthday message. I respected her wishes because I didn't want to overstep. But it became clear over time that her dad's minimal presence seemed to outweigh all my efforts. Any time he called or showed up, it was like nothing else mattered. Meanwhile, if I so much as enforced a curfew, I'd get hit with, "You're not my real dad." When she graduated from high school 2 years ago, I really wanted to celebrate her achievement. High school graduation is a big deal, and I thought it deserved a proper send-off. To mark the occasion, I decided to treat her and her 2 closest friends to a week-long trip to California. I covered everything: the flights, the hotel, their meals, and even some spending money for activities like Disneyland and a Hollywood tour. It wasn't cheap, but I wanted her to have a memorable experience before she moved on to the next chapter of her life. I'll admit, part of me hoped the trip would also serve as a way to show her how much I cared. I wanted her to feel celebrated and loved, even if I wasn't her biological dad. And it seemed to work for a while. She came back from the trip full of stories and good vibes. Then, a few weeks after her return, she sat us down and told us she wanted to take a gap year. She explained that she wasn't sure what she wanted to study or what kind of career she wanted to pursue, and she felt like taking time to find herself was the right move. To be honest, I wasn't thrilled. College was already a big expense, and delaying it for a year meant her starting later than planned, which might throw off some of our financial planning. Still, I tried to be supportive. I told her she could stay at home while she figured things out. That's when she dropped another bombshell. She wanted to spend her gap year traveling, not just a short vacation. Either she was talking about backpacking across Europe for 6 months with 2 of her friends. I had mixed feelings about it. On one hand, I could see the value in travel. It's a great way to learn about the world, gain independence, and create unforgettable memories. On the other hand, this wasn't exactly a budget-friendly plan. She wasn't working or saving up for the trip herself, so guess who would have to foot the bill? Yep, me. After discussing it with my wife, I reluctantly agreed to support her. I paid for her plane tickets and her hostel stays and even gave her a monthly allowance to cover food, transportation, and sightseeing. It felt like a massive financial leap, but I told myself it was worth it if it helped her grow and gain some clarity about her future. When she came back, she was full of incredible stories about the people she met, the places she visited, and the experiences she had. She showed us hundreds of photos and talked non-stop about how the trip had changed her perspective. But one thing hadn't changed. She still had no idea what she wanted to do with her life. After a few weeks of her lounging around at home, I gently encouraged her to start college. I reminded her that she'd need a degree to keep her options open and build a stable future. To her credit, she agreed. And last fall, she finally enrolled at a university. Once again, I stepped up to cover the majority of her tuition, housing, and living expenses. And unsurprisingly, her biological dad was nowhere to be found during this process. He didn't contribute a dime or even bother to call and wish her good luck when she started classes. Around the same time, my wife and I began discussing long-term financial planning, specifically for our younger daughter, who is now 8. I've always believed in the importance of setting up a financial safety net. So, I proposed creating a trust fund for her. The idea was to ensure her future was secure, whether she wanted to go to college, start a business, or have some breathing room as an adult. At first, my wife was on board. She agreed that it was a smart move to plan ahead and set aside money specifically for our younger daughter. But when my stepdaughter found out about the trust fund, everything changed. One evening, she confronted me, saying that she was upset, almost accusing me of playing favorites. She asked why I was setting up a trust fund for my younger daughter, but not for her. I tried to explain as calmly as I could that this wasn't about favoritism. I pointed out that I'd already spent a significant amount of money on her education, her gap year, her car, her medical bills, and countless other expenses over the years. The trust fund was meant to level the playing field for her younger sister, who hadn't yet had the kind of financial support my stepdaughter had already received. I thought my explanation was reasonable, even logical, but she wasn't satisfied. Her voice cracked as she told me it felt like I was saying she didn't matter as much, that she wasn't really part of the family. I tried to reassure her that this wasn't the case, but the conversation took an unexpected turn when she said something that completely caught me off guard. She wanted me to adopt her. For a moment, I was speechless. After all these years of treating me like the outsider parent, of reminding me that I wasn't her real dad, she now wanted to make it official. I didn't know what to say. So, I asked her why adoption was so important to her now. At first, I was stunned. After years of hearing, "You're not my real dad," this sudden change of heart seemed strange. I asked her why she wanted to be adopted now, and her reasoning felt more calculated than heartfelt. She said it would make her feel more secure and officially part of the family. I brought this up with my wife, expecting her to see my side of things, but instead she sided with her daughter. She argued that I'd been acting as her father for over a decade, and that making it official was just the next logical step. She accused me of playing favorites by setting up a trust fund for our younger daughter and not including her older one. This led to an explosive argument. I told my wife I wasn't comfortable with adoption, especially since her daughter had spent years keeping me at arm's length. I pointed out all the ways I'd supported her financially and emotionally over the years, funding her travels, paying for college, buying her a car, and more. My wife dismissed all of that, saying it was my duty as her stepfather. The tension in the house became unbearable. My stepdaughter started giving me the silent treatment, only speaking to me when absolutely necessary. My wife kept pressuring me to reconsider adoption, framing it as a way to prove my commitment to the family. But to me, it felt like they were trying to guilt me into something I wasn't comfortable with. The final straw came when my stepdaughter said that she didn't ask me to do all that for her. I chose to, and I shouldn't act like she owes me anything. That statement hit me like a ton of bricks. She was right. I chose to step up because I loved her and wanted to give her the best possible opportunities. But hearing her dismiss everything I'd done as if it didn't matter, that was heartbreaking. Now I'm stuck. My wife and stepdaughter think I'm being selfish and playing favorites. But from my perspective, I'm just trying to protect my biological daughter's future. I've already given so much to my stepdaughter, and I don't think it's fair to keep giving when she's never fully accepted me as a father figure except when it benefits her. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for refusing to adopt my stepdaughter and not including her in my biological daughter's trust fund? Update 1. First, I want to take a moment to thank everyone for the overwhelming support. Seriously, I didn't expect my post to resonate with so many people, even those who didn't fully agree with my perspective. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Reading through the comments was a bit of an emotional roller coaster, but it also gave me a lot to think about. There are a few things that came up repeatedly in the comments, and I feel like I should address them before getting into what's happened since my last update. A lot of people asked why in my 10 years of marriage, I never considered adopting my stepdaughter. The truth is, I did, especially when she was younger. Back then, I really thought about taking that step to solidify our bond and show her I was committed to being her dad in every way. But when I brought up the idea, my wife was strongly against it. She felt that adopting her would erase her biological father from the picture, and she was worried that it would make her daughter feel like she had to choose between us. At the time, I respected her feelings. I thought she knew what was best for her daughter and that leaving the door open for her biological dad would be the healthiest choice. Looking back, I can see how that decision created some distance between us. I always treated my stepdaughter like she was my own, but without that legal tie, there was always this unspoken line in the sand. Her biological dad didn't step up much, but the idea of him still lingered in the background. And now, years later, it feels like the absence of that legal bond is being thrown back in my face, as though I failed her in some way. It's frustrating because I've tried so hard to fill a role that wasn't even left vacant by my choice. Another common question was about the trust fund specifically. Why I wouldn't just set up one for both kids to avoid all this drama. First of all, let me be clear. I'm not a millionaire. Setting up a trust fund isn't a casual thing for me. It's a significant financial commitment. Secondly, trust funds are about long-term planning. My stepdaughter is 20 years old and already in college. Over the years, I've spent a lot of money on her education, her living expenses, and even things like her high school graduation trip and gap year. My 8-year-old, on the other hand, hasn't started her journey yet. The trust fund is meant to give her the same kind of head start that I've already provided for her sister. It's not about playing favorites. It's about trying to be fair in the long run. I saw a few comments accusing me of playing favorites or creating division between the kids, and that really hurt. I don't see it that way at all. If anything, I've tried to give my stepdaughter opportunities that I didn't even have growing up. I paid for her gap year in Europe, helped her with college, and supported her in ways her own biological father never did. But that doesn't mean I can ignore my younger daughter's future. She deserves the same level of support and care, and the trust fund is a way to ensure she gets that. There were also a few people who question why I'm still with my wife if these issues keep cropping up. To be honest, marriage isn't always easy, and there are definitely moments when I've wondered if we're on the same page. But I love my wife, and I love the life we've built together. We've had our struggles, but I believe in trying to work through them instead of throwing in the towel at the first sign of trouble. Now, for the update. The tension at home reached a boiling point after my last post. My wife was still upset. My stepdaughter was still ignoring me, and I was starting to feel like the odd man out in my own house. My biological daughter, thankfully, is too young to understand what's going on, but she definitely picked up on the overall mood. Couple of days ago, my stepdaughter sat me down for what she called a heart-to-heart. I was hopeful, thinking she wanted to clear the air. Instead, she doubled down. She said she'd been thinking about everything. And while she still didn't think she owed me anything, she felt adoption was the right step because it would show the world and her biological father that I'm the one who's truly been there for her. She even suggested it might help her financially down the road, hinting that it could open doors for inheritance and other benefits. I stayed calm and told her I wasn't ready to make that kind of commitment. I explained that adoption is about more than just legalities. It's about a genuine relationship. I asked her why she suddenly wanted this now after years of keeping me at a distance. Her response, because I'm an adult now, and I see things differently. That might have sounded reasonable if it weren't for the fact that every example she gave was tied to financial security. I'm not saying she doesn't care about me at all, but it's hard not to feel like I'm being used. Later that night, my wife and I had another argument. She accused me of punishing her daughter for her biological father's failings and said I was putting a price tag on my love. That really hurt because I've never seen it that way. I told her I'd already gone above and beyond for her daughter and that expecting me to commit to adoption when I'm clearly uncomfortable with it isn't fair. She stormed off, saying she needed space to think. Now I'm sleeping on the couch wondering if this is the hill our marriage might die on. Update 2. Hey everyone. Thanks again for all the comments, advice, and perspectives. After the last update, things have taken a sharp turn, and honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything. I decided to take some time away from the house to clear my thoughts and avoid further arguments. I'm staying at my brother's place for now, which isn't ideal. I didn't want to leave my 8-year-old daughter behind with my wife in this situation, but given the circumstances, I didn't feel like I had much of a choice. I'm hoping this space will help me figure out my next steps. The situation at home has escalated significantly. My wife is now threatening divorce, saying that my refusal to adopt her daughter and include her in the trust fund is a betrayal of our marriage vows. She's framed it as me abandoning the family and prioritizing money over relationships. To make matters worse, her daughter has started sending me guilt, tripping texts accusing me of destroying her future. She claims she feels like I've given up on her, just like her biological father did. These messages hurt because despite everything, I still care deeply for her. But the tone and timing of them just reinforce what I've been feeling lately, like I'm not being seen as a person who's tried his best, but rather as a means to an end. Since leaving the house, I've had some important conversations with my brother, who's also a lawyer. I wanted to understand the legal implications of adoption, inheritance, and everything else that's come up recently. He confirmed a lot of what many of you have pointed out in the comments. Adopting my stepdaughter would legally bind me to her in ways I'm not comfortable with. For example, once she's adopted, she would have equal rights to contest any estate plans I make, including the trust fund for my biological daughter. While I don't think she'd deliberately try to harm her sister's future, the way she's been hyper-focused on financial security lately makes me uneasy. This isn't just about emotions anymore. It's about legal and financial realities. My brother pointed out that if I had adopted her earlier, these issues could have been addressed proactively. But adopting her now at 20, and with everything that's happened, feels like a massive risk. To get a clearer picture, I also sat down with a financial advisor to review my expenses over the last decade. What I found shocked even me. Over the past 13 years, I've spent close to $500,000 on my stepdaughter. This includes her education, medical expenses, extracurriculars, clothing, and other day-to-day costs. When I saw the final number, I had to sit back and take a deep breath. That's more than most parents spend on their biological children over the course of a lifetime. Here's the kicker. Legally, I have no obligation to her. Since I never formally adopted her, and her biological father is still technically in the picture, even if he's barely there, I'm not required to support her financially beyond our current household expenses. My lawyer assured me that the trust fund I'm setting up for my biological daughter is entirely within my rights. My wife's argument that I'm somehow being unfair doesn't hold up legally or morally in my opinion. What's been the hardest to swallow is that my wife doesn't seem to grasp the reality of our finances. She keeps acting like I can just figure it out or magically produce more money. But every dollar I've spent on her daughter is a dollar not saved for our future or our biological daughter's future. I don't regret supporting my stepdaughter. She deserves stability and opportunities. But at some point, I have to draw a line. During this time, I've also had a chance to reflect on our marriage and the patterns that led us here. My wife has always put her daughter's needs first, which I understood and supported when we got married. But over the years, it's felt less like a partnership and more like I'm the provider while she makes the decisions. She pushed to keep her biological father in the picture, even though he contributed nothing and discouraged me from stepping into a more formal parental role. Now, when it's convenient for her, she wants me to adopt her daughter and assume full financial responsibility. One of the most painful moments came when my wife called me last night. She said she's spoken to her friends who agree that I'm being unreasonable and that any real man would step up for the family. Hearing that felt like a slap in the face. What have I been doing for the past 10 years, if not stepping up? As for my stepdaughter, she hasn't reached out since the guilt-tripping messages. I've heard from mutual friends that she's venting about me online, framing me as a cold and selfish stepdad who's abandoning her at a critical time. Part of me wants to confront her and set the record straight, but I know that'll just escalate things further. At this point, I'm trying to figure out how to move forward. Divorce isn't what I want, but if my wife continues to frame this as an ultimatum, I don't see how we can come back from it. I'm not willing to jeopardize my biological daughter's future or my own financial stability for someone who doesn't even see me as a true parental figure unless it's convenient for her. I've also started drafting a formal plan for moving forward with clear boundaries and expectations. If my wife and stepdaughter can't accept those, then I'll have to make some tough decisions. For now, I'm focusing on what's best for my 8-year-old and trying to protect her future as much as I can. Thanks again for all the support and tough love. It's been a lifeline during this chaotic time. I'll keep you updated as things develop. Update 3. Hey everyone, This is likely my last update. A lot has happened since my last post, and I'm relieved to say things are finally starting to settle down. It's been a messy, emotional few weeks, but I feel like we're moving in the right direction, albeit with some bumps along the way. Things took an unexpected turn when my stepdaughter came home one evening in tears. She tried to reach out to her biological father to talk about the situation, hoping he might step up for her in some way. She told him about the conflict at home, her financial concerns, and the idea of me adopting her. His response, a flat-out, "I'm not interested in playing happy family with you." He also reminded her, in no uncertain terms, that he was not made of money when she brought up her college expenses. I'll admit, I felt a little bit angry when I heard that. 4 years, I'd carried the load he abandoned, thinking maybe it was better for her to have at least some connection with him than nothing at all. But his complete lack of accountability or compassion made my blood boil. I thought this finally might be the moment she'd see how much I've done for her, how I've been the one supporting her dreams, her trips, her education. Instead, it seemed to backfire. She came at me, tear-streaked and furious, accusing me of abandoning her just like her father. It was a gut punch to hear her say that after everything I've done. I stayed calm though, and told her I wasn't going to argue. She stormed out, saying she needed space and stayed with a friend for a couple of nights. While she was gone, I had one of the most honest conversations I've ever had with my wife. I told her flat out that I couldn't keep living like this, being treated like an ATM and not a person. I told her I loved her and her daughter, but the constant guilt-tripping and lack of acknowledgement were taking a toll. I said I was still willing to help with her daughter's college expenses because I care about her future, but adoption was off the table. To my surprise, my wife didn't fight me on it. She actually admitted she'd been too hard on me. She said she'd been caught between trying to support her daughter and being fair to me. And in the process, she lost sight of everything I've done for them. She apologized for making me feel unappreciated. It wasn't perfect, and I could still sense some tension in her voice, but it was a start. A couple of days later, my stepdaughter called me, not in anger or frustration, but to have an actual conversation. It caught me off guard. She said she'd had time to think while staying with her friend and had talked to some of her peers. She told me she realized how much I've done for her over the years, way more than most parents, biological or otherwise, would ever do. Hearing her say that felt like a weight lifting off my chest. We talked for nearly an hour. She explained that her outburst wasn't really about the trust fund or the money. It was about fear. She's scared of the uncertainty of her future and felt blindsided by the realization that her biological father would never step up for her. She apologized for how she'd been acting and said she understood now why I'd been so firm about the trust fund for my daughter. She said something that stuck with me. "You've done more for me than I ever gave you credit for, and I'm sorry for not seeing that sooner." That conversation was a turning point. She told me she would continue going to community college for 2 years to save money and then transfer to a 4-year university. She's applying for scholarships and looking into work-study programs. I was proud of her for taking ownership of her future. One of my friends, who is a financial advisor, even stepped in to help her create a realistic budget and financial plan, and she seemed genuinely grateful. At home, things are still a work in progress. My wife and I have started seeing a counselor to work on our communication and rebuild trust. It hasn't been easy, but I think we've turned a corner. I've learned a lot through this experience about setting boundaries, about the importance of fairness, and about being valued for who I am, not just what I can provide. For those wondering, no, I'm not adopting my stepdaughter. We all agree that it's not necessary for me to continue supporting her emotionally or helping with college. Our relationship is better now because it's built on mutual understanding, not guilt or obligation. Thank you, Reddit, for helping me navigate this mess. Your tough love, legal insights, and shared experiences were a lifeline. It's been a rough ride, but I feel stronger and more clear-headed than I've been in years. My family isn't perfect, but we're moving forward. And for now, that's enough. And for anyone in a similar situation, remember to set boundaries, communicate openly, and fight for your own worth. You deserve to be appreciated for who you are, not just for what you can do. Edit. Hi guys, I don't have much of an update to share since things are slowly but surely getting better. But I wanted to address some of the comments I've seen, Especially those calling me wimpy or saying I should have made my wife and stepdaughter pay for how they acted. Look, I get where those sentiments come from. It's easy to say just walk away or stand your ground when you're looking at the situation from the outside. But for me, life isn't that black and white. Sure, this was a major conflict, and I won't lie, it pushed me to my limit. But ending things with my wife over one, albeit huge, issue would feel like throwing away a decade of love, partnership, and the life we've built together. If there's even the tiniest chance that things can work out, I'm going to take it. As for my stepdaughter, yeah, she said some hurtful things and this whole situation was messy, but I still care about her like she's my own. Fights aside, she's a smart, resilient young woman with a bright future ahead of her. She's learning and growing, just like the rest of us. Sometimes the hardest thing is to stick around and try to make things better, even when it feels easier to give up. That's what I'm doing, trying to rebuild my family, even if it's not perfect. That's all for now. Thanks for hearing my rant. You've poured your heart into family. Now watch it bloom on boundaries you built.